They were cultural treasures and hubs of the community in Gaza. Now they lay in ruins. Like Palmyra in Syria or the ancient city of Nimrud in Iraq, victims of war. These pictures show the St. Porphyrius Church, one of the oldest in the world, before Israel's assault began 3 months ago. This is what it looks like now, after an Israeli airstrike in October.
What's the reason? Why? We asking from God to bring the peace in the area. Our roots are here. We are here 2,000 years, and we are not going to leave. We'll stay here. We'll continue our life.
The church's father, Habib Silas, says 17 people died in the strike on the compound where people were taking shelter. Israel says it was, quote, collateral damage and wasn't the intended target. But it's not the only historic site to have been destroyed. The Grand Mosque in Gaza has history that is said to date back to the time of the Philistines and has spent time as both a temple and a church before becoming a mosque. Today, all that remains standing is the minaret. Its library, with historic manuscripts, largely lost.
The mosque itself, is we can say it's a symbol of the people and as a symbol of the daily cultural life in Gaza. So unfortunately, with this lost, the people in Gaza, they lost a very important symbol of their identity and of their, as well, city.
And it's not just places of worship. This bathhouse, said to have been built in the 14th century, has been in the hands of the same family for generations. Destroyed in an instant. The Israeli military saying it was targeting a Hamas terrorist squad. Whenever this war ends and reconstruction begins, one thing is for sure. So much of Gaza's history now lies in rubble. Neda Bashir, CNN in Beirut.
The top U.S. diplomat is pressing ahead with his whistle-stop tour in the region, aiming to prevent the war from spreading. Secretary of State Antony Blinken is holding talks in Jordan right now before flying to Qatar and the UAE later in the day. Well, that's on the heels of his visit to Turkey and Greece on Saturday. Nick Robertson has more.
Well, one of the principal messages that Secretary Blinken is bringing into all his meetings in the region is that the United States does not want to see an escalation of tensions in the region. This is something that he hopes is communicated from his meetings through to the Iranian leadership and through to Iran's proxies as well. And the day that he arrived into the region, Hezbollah retaliated for that killing of a Hamas leader in Beirut earlier on in the week. They say in response to that, they fired 62 missiles from Lebanon into the north of Israel to a military observation post on the top of a mountain. Now, the IDF said they counted about 40 incoming missiles and that they responded, hitting the terror cell, they say, that was responsible for that attack. The question now, does that lead to a further escalation? The hope, of course, is not. And that attack by Hezbollah at least doesn't seem to have crossed a threshold calling for a much bigger response from Israel. But when Secretary Blinken gets here to Israel, top of the agenda is going to be the humanitarian situation in Gaza. He's going to want to push to get more humanitarian supplies in there, water, food, medical supplies to make sure it can reach all the population. He's going to want to push for more safety and security for the civilian population in Gaza and that they be allowed to go back to their homes. He's going to push to get more of the hostages, all of the hostages released if possible, and is going to drill down on detail with the Israeli leadership on their day after scenario, how they see the situation in Gaza evolving after the military threat has gone. The details that the Israeli government, the defense minister has put out so far are relatively thin and indicate that the United States, backed by European partners, regional partners here, would be sort of leading the humanitarian reconstruction focus in Gaza. A lot of other unanswered questions there, Secretary Blinken very likely to want to dive into. Nick Robertson, CNN, Tel Aviv, Israel.
All right, let's get the view from the ground. Scott Anderson is the Deputy Director for the UNRWA, UNRWA as it's known, in Gaza. He joins me from Rafah in the south of the Strip. And thanks for doing so. Some of the realities coming out of Gaza right now are frankly chilling. These warnings of famine, disease spreading, serious wounds being untreated or not treated properly. What is the most dire aspect to you when you look at Gaza right now?
Well, good morning. Thanks for the opportunity to speak with you today. I mean, I think for us, it's a couple things, and they all are life-saving. The first is, as you said, the levels of hunger are quite severe in Gaza. And from Rafah to the north, it gets worse the further north you go. So we're making a concerted effort to try to import more food into Gaza and make sure it gets to the people in need, including the 1.4 million people in the Rafah governorate. And then secondly is the hospital network in Gaza has been severely damaged. It's almost collapsed. Bed capacity is well over 300% for normal beds and well over 200% for ICU. And because of the security situation, organizations like Medicine Sans Frontières, MSF, have had to evacuate hospitals where they were providing support. So for us, it's very much in life-saving mode and trying to make sure that we get things to people that they need.
When Israel says its offensive could continue for months more, what goes through your mind?
Well, I think the thing that goes through my mind is it's going to be very difficult for people that are living in tents. I'm working out of a health center in southern Gaza, and if I look to my left out the window, what I see is a tent city. People trying their best to live their lives and take care of their children as they can. It's winter time now in Gaza, so we're always concerned about exposure, especially for children. But the largest concern I would have is the pressure on people is extraordinary, and I don't know how much more they can bear before something explodes in the southern part of Gaza within the civilian population, which would impact the UN and other international humanitarians' ability to respond to the ongoing operation.
The vast, as we just said, the vast majority of Gaza's 2.2 million residents have been displaced. I mean, 90% according to the UN. That is staggering. I've been to Gaza several times. It's tiny. What are conditions like for those people, especially with these reports of disease spreading?
I mean, conditions are dire, is the only way I can describe it. I've spent much time in Gaza as well. This is the fourth conflict that I've been in, and the other three are dwarfed by the scale and the impact of what's happening today. We talked about the health sector and food, and the other thing I'd say that is significantly challenging for people is wash. In our shelters, there's roughly 300 people per bathroom. So mostly what people do in their daily lives is you're trying to find food, they're trying to stay warm, and they're trying to find a bathroom, which are all very simple things that most of us go about our normal day without ever giving a second consideration to how we will, accomplish that.
Yeah, Martin Griffiths also said, quote, Gaza has become simply uninhabitable. Its people are witnessing daily threats to their very existence while the world watches on. Would you agree with that? Gaza uninhabitable given the level of destruction? I mean, where are people even going to go when the fighting stops?
Well, yeah, that's something we're giving a lot of thought to, and we would very much like to get back to the northern part of Gaza to do an assessment and to provide food and other services for the people that are there. We think there's still 300,000 people north of Wadi Gaza, give or take. Estimates, you have different estimates depending on the organization, but certainly in the current environment, this is unlivable for people in the long term. I mean, they're barely surviving in the short term. It's very difficult, as I said, for food and healthcare. We remain very concerned about an outbreak of disease, given the proximity that people live in to each other, as well as the state of the health network and the sewage network. So it is very close to unlivable. And for the people here, I think you went out and talked to each of them, they would say it is unlivable. And mostly what they want is just to go home.